kind of a quick little video here. Don't want to take a ton of time. So today, Thursday, May 4th, tomorrow, we have full moon and lunar eclipse. It's going to be 20 degrees of Leo, sidereal, so sidereal, visible sky astrology. If that sounds wrong because you follow Western tropical astrology, don't get too upset. I'm using a different zodiac. So we've got that going on. So it's a lunar eclipse, and in the process, it comes between the moon comes between the Earth and Jupiter. So it occults Jupiter, it hides Jupiter. So that's pretty interesting because when you dig into the ancient astrology, which is I'm learning more about. So, not so much the Vedic, but the like Babylonian, Sumerian, that kind of stuff. Even Hellenistic to a degree. So yeah, in the ancient astrology, this type of an eclipse has a lot of different meanings. So I'll get into that kind of in the second half of this video. So first off, lunar eclipse. Lunar eclipse is always on a full moon. So full moon and lunar eclipse, 20 degrees Libra. So what's Libra? For the world, Libra deals with, it's the other. So it's all the other people in your life, all the other different types of relationships with different types of people in your life. Symbol is the merchant scales. So it deals with balance, even exchange, the give and take of life. So it's business, it's the marketplace. It can deal with politics because of the give and take and the compromise and the trading favors, that kind of thing. But yeah, it deals with all types of relationships, spouses, friends, business partners, everybody. It's everybody besides you. Aries is you, and it's what goes on in your head, and it's your individuality. Libra is everybody else. So we just had solar eclipse. And what was that? Was that April 20th? Yeah. God. April 19th. So we had that new moon solar eclipse, April 19th in Aries. So following that solar eclipse, 2 weeks later, we get to May 5th, we've got the lunar. So they run in pairs like that. Two is always two eclipses, 2 weeks apart. Lunar and a solar or vice versa. So that solar was in Aries. So that's what goes on in our head. It's us. It's our individuality. So Aries is where the sun is going to be during this lunar eclipse. So Aries is shining its full light onto the moon. The sun in Aries is shining its full light onto the moon, which is over in Libra. So, and in Aries, with the sun, you still have Uranus is very close to the sun. So the sun's at 20 degrees, Uranus is at 24. You've got the Mercury still retrograde at 14 degrees. You got Rahu at 9 degrees, and then Jupiter. You've got Jupiter at 3 degrees at this point. Jupiter's out of Gandanta. So Jupiter was in Pisces, which deals with deep water, deals with emotion. It's where Jupiter meditates, sort of goes to sleep, goes into deep meditation. Jupiter goes into Aries, it comes out of it, and then the first 2 degrees of Aries, it's Gandanta and has to shake off that water. So Jupiter's done that. Jupiter's ready to light the sacred fires and start, as the priests start doing the rituals that, protects the earth and its people. So all of those planets in Aries, they're basically, the sun is absorbing their energy and shedding it, shining it onto the moon in Libra. So when you put those together, Sun, Uranus, Mercury retrograde, Rahu, Jupiter. And Jupiter's at the bottom. Jupiter and Rahu are towards the bottom. So the planets, if you have multiple planets in a conjunction, the one at the very bottom rules the conjunction, but the lower the planet is in degrees, the more power it has in the conjunction. So you've got Rahu and Jupiter. They're going to expand whatever they're near. So they're with Mercury retrograde, the Sun, and Uranus. So that solar eclipse in Aries was all about rethinking ourselves, our identity, our individuality, what action we want to take, reviewing our thinking. With a Mercury retrograde in there, that's all about reviewing your thinking and thinking twice about how you think. So all of that energy is going to the light that's going from the sun to the moon in Libra. So since the moon's in Libra, we're going to be thinking about our associations and relationships with people. They're going to be shook up. There's going to be a little bit of chaos introduced. And, Mercury especially is telling us think twice about who you give your loyalty to. So, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, like especially here in America. It's like the economy's falling apart, banks are collapsing, and then the IRS, which is our federal tax collector, is on a hiring spree. So they don't really give a shit. And the IRS doesn't work for the government. It really works for the Federal Reserve Bank, which is owned by a group of banks like, Bank of America, JP Morgan, Chase Manhattan, Wells Fargo, big banks like that, BNY Mellon, so on and so forth. So IRS is the collection agency from them, and, they're not going to give a shit if people's businesses aren't doing well and they're not making enough money. That it's like the mafia. It's like, fuck you, pay me. So it's a time to rethink loyalties and who you just give your carte blanche, your blank check to in terms of your relationships. It's like think twice where that loyalty goes. And at this time, we also have Saturn, 3 houses away from Aries. Saturn's in Aquarius. It's looking at Aries where the sun is, and the sun again is shining this light to create this full moon, this lunar eclipse. So Saturn is saying, be careful, do things the right way, no fucking around. That's kind of what Saturn's about. So, and then this lunar eclipse, K2 is the lunar node that is casting the shadow. So K2 is all about cutting things away. K2 is about letting things go. So this is about letting go of loyalties, relationships, associations that don't work for us. So yeah, in times of shakeups like this, that's a big thing, is, people rethink that kind of thing. Okay. And, that's the other thing too, is, so Uranus, Sun, and then that retrograde Mercury and Aries, they're in the lunar mansion of, the Western name is Hades, and then the Vedic name is Bharani. So they both deal with, Hades is the god of the underworld. So the god of the underworld, so that you can spiritually evolve, makes you deal with things that you don't want to think about, makes you deal with feelings you don't want to feel, and just like your unfinished business that needs to be wrapped up. So that sun putting the light on the moon, that's what it's telling us about our relationships, our loyalties, our associations. So pretty interesting. Now that moon, that 20 degrees of Libra, lunar mansion is, the Vedic name is Vishaka. Western name is Dinas. So Dinas was a name for the Roman war god Mars, and then the Greek war god Aries. So the symbol for Vishaka or Dinas, it's a triumphal arch. So the Romans used to build these things, and the triumphal arch is basically an army after winning a campaign, after winning a war, would return home and have a parade and walk through this arch. It's like the Arc de Triomphe, the Arc of Triumph in Paris. That's an imitation of that. I think Napoleon Bonaparte built it. So, and Roman cities are, full of these things. So, in order to win, you have to deal with and settle the uncomfortable business, in your life and within yourself. So, pretty interesting. All right. So some notes here. I made some notes about the ancient astrology, which I mentioned in the beginning. So I'm still learning about this, but I'm kind of like imitating while I learn. And just, a big part of it is learning where to go for the information. So these are the things that I looked up, and it's not so much subject to my interpretation. This is just from the very ancient astrology, like from the texts that survived. Because a lot of this stuff was found in Babylon, Sumer, um, Assyria, during the last couple hundred years by archaeologists. So anyway, so a full moon, lunar eclipse at 20 degrees of Libra sidereal. So it tends to mean, since it's in Saturn's exaltation sign, so Saturn's exalted in Libra, um, this deals with the death of, an old respected sort of pillar of society, somebody of standing, be it a politician, an entertainer, some well-known public figure that whose words people tend to hang on. So yeah, since it's an eclipse, the light is turned out. Light turns out on some Saturnian person, again, an older, dignified, respected, well-known person, who at the very least portrays his or herself to be a man or woman of the people who wants to help the people. Because Saturn's a public figure, Saturn fights for the underdogs. So politicians, people who lead NGOs, billionaires, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Klaus Schwab, they want you to think that they're like fighting for the little guy, but they've got their own agendas going. Politicians do this all day, multimillionaire politicians. So yeah, loss of one of these Saturnian, archetypally Saturnian leaders of society. So this lunar eclipse also stands for death of a great man, death of a king. There's a lot of politicians are old, unhealthy. There have been so many astrological conjunctions, alignments over the last year or two, suggesting that Mr. Biden's health could be in some danger. I don't wish anything upon him, but he's not in good condition. But then again, if you look up that TED Talk, what the hell's that woman's name? I can't remember. She was director of disguise at Central Intelligence. And she gave a TED Talk about how sophisticated that the technology of like latex masks are, and even using technology to imitate people's voices. She gave a TED Talk about this. So it's basically what, was in the Mission Impossible Tom Cruise movie back in, 1999, 2000, where he's peeling the masks off. So there's a TED Talk about this. So, I mean, it's not just me being a fucking QAnoner. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's like Mr. Biden may have, he may have passed some time ago. Who knows? Or that might be him. I don't know. It's the way the world is right now. The way it's always been. Anyway, yeah. So this eclipse also stands for the destruction of vines and trees. So things like drought and fire, and there's all kinds of crazy weather going on. This eclipse, you want to look at the path of the visibility. It's in pretty much the entire Eastern Hemisphere, minus Great Britain and Ireland. So pretty much the whole Eastern Hemisphere. So all of these things will primarily affect the Eastern Hemisphere. And so another thing with an eclipse like this, it says the Southern King falls in battle. So Southern kings, I mean, you can look at the world map, use the equator as a dividing line, and say, okay, some leader from the Southern Hemisphere. Or, you look at a region like Europe, okay, Southern Europe. So that's one way to look at this. Ukraine is south of Russia. So I don't know. Maybe something happens to Mr. Zelensky. Who knows? So a Southern king falls in battle. That can mean a lot of things. Or, Central Intelligence goes after Ron DeSantis on behalf of, the drug companies and the banks. Who knows? Hope nothing like that happens, of course. So this eclipse also stands for hunger in a Western country. So could be some food problems in Europe, maybe Africa. Um, another indication here from this type of eclipse. In the West, a rebel will lead an uprising against his king, supported by people of high social standing. So this happens throughout world history where, one group of wealthy people want to stage a coup against somebody in power. So they find a rebel, and they wind him up and send him on his way. It's like Lenin, Hitler, um, all these banana republics where the U.S. intelligence services and military's been installing governments, for the last 100 years, stuff like that. Another one: a king will capture another king. So I don't know, what does that look like? Like a king, a world leader visits another country and gets arrested. I'm sure all the snowflakes are cheering for that to happen to Mr. Putin, but I doubt he's leaving home anytime soon. And what else? Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, this moon undergoing this lunar eclipse occults Jupiter, hides Jupiter. So that's going to be visible in just a small part of the planet. So it's Scotland, it's the very north of Ireland, Iceland, and then Canada, and the lower 48 United States. It's not visible in Alaska. So Jupiter stands for, rulers, stands for banks. Very importantly, stands for banks. So an eclipse occulting Jupiter like this stands for a collapse of a bank, maybe more than one bank, a collapse of financial institutions, storms, the death of a leader of a great nation. It also stands for good merriment for Western armies. So, NATO might be feeling proud of itself, even though, the the armies of NATO are, now using drag queens to boost their recruitment. Real formidable fighting forces, right? But you feed the army enough propaganda, you can convince everybody except the people on the front line that they're actually winning when they're not. Um, Ukraine and NATO are getting embarrassed. So what else? Oh yeah, and the last one, Jupiter. Jupiter being occulted like this will protect the elders of the council or the Senate. So like the ruler's advisors, the king's advisors, or his cronies, especially these elders that are held in high esteem of the ruler. So kicking the can down the road a little bit, maybe people's deeds being hidden for just a little while longer. So yeah, not much to say comparatively to what I usually have about this, but just wanted to make a little video today. That's about it. See you later.